Dawn of the Dead. Zombies. A reflection of man's demons. George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead was released in 1978. It was the second in his Dead series and had the highest grossing box office worldwide, making $55 million. There are no recurring characters from his previous film, and this is only speculation, but I think that was because Romero wanted to have new themes and new characters to keep the series fresh. It was a huge success. There are many versions of this movie. The Italian version Zombie was actually a edit by Dario Argento. Argento was an Italian horror director who helped finance the sequel because he loved the first movie so much. He also helped write and edit the European versions. There are 5 versions of the film: the Cannes Film Festival version, the US theatrical version, the European or Italian version, and the director's cut. And I also believe there is a UK version as well. There are many edits to this movie. The film took 4 months to shoot. The shooting of the film took place in Pennsylvania, in the cities of Pittsburgh and Monroeville, the primary filming location being the Monroeville Mall. The mall was still operational, mind you, so shooting took place at night, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and everything was cleaned up before the shoppers came in the next morning. Shooting had to be stopped, though, due to the holiday rush. I think Romero was constantly being influenced by the mall and these limitations caused by holiday consumerism, fueling his desire to bring this to the public's attention. The movie shows the zombie epidemic on a larger scale. You can see how urban and rural areas are affected by the hordes of the undead. It really gives you the feeling that the entire world is being affected by this mass epidemic. The hidden enemy. There are a bunch of looters and killers running free now. And that's because at the very end, when everyone sees that the shit's about to hit the fan, everyone starts to lose it. Crime goes up, people see the opportunity to get away with things, and they take it. In times of chaos, people change. And when civility is lost, people revert to their visceral urges. There's no one to tell them no anymore. The police and army are too busy trying to survive themselves. Everything is in chaos and evil is taking advantage. The hidden enemy trope makes connections to the times of the 70s. In the 70s, there were a few social issues that fueled the anxiety of people we know becoming monsters or enemies. But things were different from the hidden enemy trope of the 1950s. Social and cultural legacies from the 60s were more mainstream now. Racism and segregation was seen as immoral. Long hair and outrageous clothing were normal, and sexual freedom outside marriage was also normal. Americans were seeking a new personal liberation and were rebelling against authority. This could have been a response to the new right's take over in politics, the right wing. This neoconservatism was a reaction toward the Soviet Union, the loss of the Vietnam War, and the new youth culture of the 70s. Many politicians blamed the protesters and that cultural movement for them losing the war. The new enemy was not the hidden communist neighbor, but it was the new conservative or new liberal. Both groups feared each other. Not just that, but racism was still an issue and caused distrust between people in mixed-race neighborhoods. The blackout in New York City in 1977 saw what happens when disenfranchised people get the opportunity to stick it to the man. There was mass looting and arson going on. It lasted for 2 days, but the after effects would last much longer. Shop owners were shooting at longtime customers and neighbors. The police could barely do anything. The hidden enemy and monster in us can come up when civility is being destroyed, and that was apparent in that situation. This can fall under the humans are monsters trope as well. Science can't save us now. Science doesn't seem to have a clue about what to do in the beginning of the film. We can see as a newscaster and a scientist are discussing the new zombie epidemic. The scientist has no real answers or solutions besides just to shoot them in the head. The zombies are like a force of nature that simply engulfs and destroys, especially in large hordes. They're like a tornado or disease, except science has no answer and it is utterly useless. This symbolizes the anxiety at the time of distrusting anyone in a position of political or scientific power. People were skeptical of the new right and others protecting their best intentions. This is especially true of the black and Latino communities that seem to get the brunt of these new politics. Some science in the 70s may have caused more damage to their public persona as well. The gas additive, MTBE, was created by scientists to help gas burn more efficiently, but it is also highly water-soluble. There were many leaks in gas stations, and it leaked to the underground drinking wells. When these leaks occurred, much drinking water was destroyed. There was also the anti-science movement of the 70s, backed by writers and philosophers who believed technology would be the downfall of society. There was a fear of science and technology in the 70s, and this could have influenced the lack of science in the movie. Just before the end. Society is slowly crumbling with the zombie epidemic. The people in power are being kicked out by the underlings. Society is crumbling slowly, but you can see the destruction happening around everywhere. The zombie army is slowly moving across the country. Politicians and police have no more power. People are either killing them or they themselves are fleeing. It's ominously hinted that things will only get worse. It's verging on a scavenger type of world soon. We've seen cases where a lack of order and civility can take us and change us into monsters. This trope is one of the most commonly used in apocalyptic film and literature. You can see the downfall slowly happening. Eros and Thanatos. Eros, the pleasure principle, and Thanatos, the death drive. These are two basic drives typically at war with each other. Roughly stated, the result of this conflict is anxiety. In the film, Peter has to make a decision to live or die. But first, let's look at Eros and Thanatos real quick. The pleasure drive and the pain drive of man is another way to explain it. You either take the easy path and live a safe, pleasurable life, or take the difficult path to glory, which could also kill you. It's simple. You either live on as a coward or die a hero in infamy. At the end of the movie, when it's just Peter and Francine, Peter tells her to get to the chopper and save herself, while he decides to stay and fight and hold off the rest of the zombies until he must inevitably kill himself off before being eaten. But at the end, he decides to escape with Francine. He took the path of pleasure. But there are two endings to this movie. One where he actually stays, fights them off until he has to kill himself, and the other one I've just mentioned, where he flees into an unknown future. This trope is used in a lot of apocalyptic stories. It's been used since the classical era of man, and it still has its uses today. Man still struggles with the forked road and must always make a life and death choice. So what does this all mean? The zombie symbolizes many things. In this movie, it symbolizes consumerism, greed, major epidemics, and the class warfare between people. The zombies are empty ciphers to be used to replace many social and psychological issues of man. Like I mentioned, in Dawn of the Dead, the zombies symbolizes materialism and urban sprawl. America at this time was a land of mindless consumers and still are today. Just look at the zombies. Even after death, Americans will congregate at the mall. It can also be a film about class warfare. The survivors in the mall represent the rich in their gated communities who shut themselves in with all their material goods, just to keep out the poor. It just goes to show you that humans can be monsters too in more than one way.